This is Dave Noll, and we're here at the Lower Anthracite Model Railroad Club in Shamokin. We're above the library on Independence Street. Okay, so this part of the layout is the Northumberland train yards, and this is where the Pensy Railroad came into, and then the Reading was across the river, and from here on they paralleled each other all the way up through Shamokin and Mount Carmel. And you have to keep in mind that it is very compressed. If we were to do this to scale, it would actually fill this entire room.
The Newer yard at one time was the biggest railroad yard in Pennsylvania.
Some people think there needs to be a little more accuracy in the yard.
So they can donate things.
Well, they want to rip stuff out and redo. Front Street Station,
Okay.
when it was a station rather than a restaurant. Before the marina was built. The marina wasn't here back in the early 50s. So now we're coming into Sunbury from the Northumberland train yards. And back in the 50s, this is the Westinghouse plant, which became Celotex, which is now just a flat piece of ground. And then the next building down here is Champ Hats. So Sunbury is pretty much compressed as opposed to some other parts of the layout. We do have a lot of some of the key buildings in Sunbury. We have the courthouse, we have the Strand Theater, there's the Edison Hotel, the bank building, and the church on Market Street. And then a lot of the other buildings are just fill-in buildings. And like I said, it's a lot of blocks missing in Sunbury, but you know, we call it selective compression. That's our artistic license that we use. So then the trains left Sunbury and worked their way up into Paxinus. So this next section is a short section depicting that area between those two places. We have the station at the Orphanage that was outside of Sunbury.
Oh, yeah, so there was a station there.
Little station. And rumor has it that the Orphanage boys were a little bit troublesome at times. So we depicted them pulling over an outhouse. So this corner here is Snyder Town. And then it comes up into a section called Crowell.
And what's interesting too about the trees and the bushes, everything on here, 99% of everything on here is especially made from materials they gathered from highway ditches and made trees out of them, painted them.
Common reed grass. It actually grows on like a 10, 12, 14 foot high stalk, usually in a swampy area along railroad tracks or highways. And what we do, it's a plume on top that's about a foot high at times. And in the fall, it gets fluffy because I guess it's producing its seeds. So if you catch it at the right time before a winter ice storm hits or something, we can go and cut them off and then trim them down into a tree size. And then we spray them with green paint and put ground foam on them. They're again inexpensive, doing it cheaply.
But more realistically.
Yeah. You can see here how close the Pensy and the Reading railroads actually were to each other as they paralleled through the area.
I'm surprised.
The Reading was the high side, and the Pennsylvania was the lower side. And they paralleled each other right up 61 from Paxinus up into Shamokin. And then this area is Paxinus, Almond's Restaurant, which is now Mosser's, Durdok's, when it was smaller across the highway from where it is now. This split here of the rails, that's where the train came into and out of the weigh scale yards. Weigh scales was there to weigh all the coal that came out of the Glen Burn mine. So that's why it was called weigh scales. So if you look up through the valley here, this represents the weigh scales area and Tharptown. You have the Clark's feed mill up there. And then you can see the Shamokin Hospital is up there. This area is still being worked on, so some of the placement needs to be worked out a little bit and some more scenery done in this area.
That railroad yard was so big in its heyday that all those businesses that are in there now, junkyards, whatever they are. That was all railroad yard, because there were hundreds of cars either waiting to get loaded or
Being weighed.
being weighed.
And that was a day. Hundreds a day.
Hundreds a day, yeah.
So that's actually the Anthroplaza area right here.
Wow, okay.
Yep.
Scott's, Wise's.
One of the members would get little rubber molds of cars and make plaster Paris replicas of the cars and paint them. And as you can see, they're plaster Paris. But look at the detail on those. Here, one of our members was kind of interested in car wrecks. So as you can see, this is off 901, isn't it, Dave?
Yes.
There's a 57 Chevy in the creek. Then we also have another traffic accident over in Shamokin at the one intersection. And then to give people a little perspective, that's our building right there with the flag on it. Now we're looking at that from the back. If we look out the front, you'll see the clock tower. So I always tell the kids, if you look out this window, you'll get a little perspective of where you are, and right there's the tower.
Okay, so this section here is coming out of the Excelsior area, coming up into Locust Summit and Locust Gap. Again, the Reading and the Pennsylvania still paralleled each other all the way up through here. And then the trains actually, the Pennsy came into Mount Carmel by where the viaduct is, and the Reading actually came on the other side of Mount Carmel. And Mount Carmel is very squished. The only representation we have of Mount Carmel is the Avenue of the Churches. And most people will recognize that. Most of the churches are still there.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the most iconic
Yeah.
of Mount Carmel.
And Rich built all those.
Yeah, Rich Catroma built all those churches from pictures. So then this is where the Pennsy actually interchanged with the Lehigh Valley, specifically the ore train. It would come up into this area, and the ore train would be broken down into 4 smaller trains that the Lehigh Valley then would take down to the Bethlehem steel mill. So now it gets a little tricky, and people always get confused because we're not following the tracks now. So we're going to come out at the backside of Shamokin, and a lot of the people that think they're familiar with the area are really confused because, no wait, how come I'm at the backside of Shamokin? Shouldn't we be coming around the other way? So we can go in there and film it the way the trains went?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so let's walk around and we'll go in.
This is the replica of the Glenburn Colliery, which disappeared a number of years ago. And of course, all the culm or the waste from the coal runs out along that ridge. So it would be hauled to the top of the hill on those dinghies, which are in motion. And then they would be taken on out through and dumped as they went.
So that's the ore train. There's 2 engines on the front and 2 on the back that push, just like they did it back in the real railroad. I think we have about 75, 77 cars on that train. And if you actually look in the cars, these are a full load. Iron ore was so heavy, they could only load the cars over the wheels. If they put it in the center, the car would actually buckle.
No kidding.
Yep. This is the backside of Sunbury.
Okay. And that big building right there would be, that's a church?
That's the church.
Okay.
That's on Market Street. So this is what we use to operate our trains on our layout. It's the NCE products, ProCab. Basically, you program the engine number into here, and you have full control over all the different sounds and the speed and everything with this cab. And you basically have an unlimited number of trains you can run from one cab. You can just keep switching through. Once you get one setup going how you want it, you can switch to another one and have that engine run. And like I said, unlimited. Very, very, very easy to operate. Okay, so this is the Lehigh Valley section of the railroad. This section, we did what we called freelance. In reality, the Lehigh Valley interchanged in Mount Carmel with the Pennsylvania and took the ore train down to the Bethlehem steel mills. We wanted to do something a little bit different. So we broke with actually modeling the area as it looked and came up with a logging railroad on the Lehigh Valley here to give a little more interest for something that you don't see in our area. So here we actually have a Shay engine bringing down a load of fresh cut logs from up on the mountain.
Too bad we can't put something in there throwing smoke out like the brakes are hot.
Oh, right. You're right. Oh, wow.
So back in this corner, we actually have some tracks of the Lehigh Valley, and then we also have the Reading Railroad, and then down here is the Pennsylvania Railroad going out underneath this area. We never had this tower here originally. That came later on once we were building the layout and scenicking the layout. I used to run the train sitting on a 6 or 8 foot ladder over here and was able to see around the layout on top of the ladder. Well, over time, mountains grew in here and could no longer see over everything. So the next thing you know, I was sitting on a 10 foot, 12 foot high ladder. Rich Gatroma figured out how to put a tower that looks like a real tower in here that sort of cantilevered over the layout to give us enough room up there. So that's where our operations then moved to up there. The Reading and the Pennsylvania, again, came all the way up into Shamokin, paralleling each other. The Pennsylvania came in on the north side of Independent Street, and the Reading came through on the south side of Independent Street along the creek.
Wow. I'm going to sneak in there. I want to get this.
Well, I can hold, let me pull that off for you.
Okay, sure, okay.
I think I know what you want to get is this. There's the Victoria and the Majestic right next to each other. The Majestic later became J.C. Penney's. We felt that we're based in Shamokin. We need to do Shamokin the favor of being as realistic as possible. So almost every block in the downtown area of Shamokin is in here, although there is a few storefronts in each block that aren't in, just to squeeze everything in. And what we also did is, for the most part, we didn't want to block the facades of the north side of the street with the buildings on the south side of the street. So we kept all these really low. And now we're keeping in mind that this is the early 50s, so what you're seeing on the layout, a lot of these buildings aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yep.
So now we're coming through the proper way that the trains would go. So they would come through downtown Shamokin and then exit. The Reading would go down into the 5th Ward of Shamokin to the yards down there, and the Pensy would go up along Route 61 up towards Mount Carmel. And this is the Eagle Silk Mill that was in Shamokin. This is actually our second model of the silk mill. A few years back, we had some water leaking from a drain pipe on the roof that wasn't connected properly, and our ceiling came down and actually flattened this whole section in here. Oh, no. So we had to rebuild some of the things here.
Wow.
Around Buffalo.
Okay.
Came down through central Pennsylvania, New York, central Pennsylvania to the Nora yards. So we said, why don't we depict that? Because we had this open area. So one of our members is putting the loading dock, a replica of the loading dock on the lake where they loaded the iron ore into the cars. So it's kind of ironic. Here's we have where the beginning is, and up here was the end.
Wow.
Load and unload.
Oh, that's great.
Nice.
Yeah, so that ties the whole loop in. This is actually the footprint of our modular layout, except now that it was made permanent. And over the last few years, what we did is we wanted to show the different scales of trains. So we have N scale, HO, S, and O. And then in addition to O, if you look up above, we have G scale.
I was just going to ask if there was a scale for that size. G. Okay.
That's what you would normally, people would do in garden railroads. These are designed that they could be run outdoors.
Nice.
Great.
That we put in just in the last year.
And there's one. Wasn't there a store in town that had, was it Fun Shop? Or somebody that had like a Christmas time, it was a train set up there.
Wasn't it Trains and Things?
Did Trains and Things have
That
one?
was the
Right
name.
down, right over here on the corner.
McDonald's in Ewleysburg has one right
Yeah,
now.
yes,
Yes.
yep.
And there's a restaurant somewhere in the area that used to use them to take the orders out
Oh, how
or
cool.
get word out.
Really cool.
And there's one over in Geisinger in the children's
Oh, yeah?
area where the fountain is down below, downstairs.
Okay.
Actually, that was our train club that did that for Geisinger. Rich Gatroma, he was an electrician for Geisinger, and he took it upon himself to donate his time to put that up for the children's hospital over there. That's our biggest issue facing us right now, is just the upkeep. Some of this stuff was put in glued 35 years ago. Sometimes the heat and cooling up here affects different things, so you know, things need repaired, and that's a lot of what we do right now. Well, we're always open at our Christmas time open house. We decide the dates earlier in the year, and they'll be posted on our website and in other places on Facebook, etc. But it's typically the 2 weekends before Christmas right now and the day after Christmas. And we've also added in the last couple of years the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which has turned out to be a nice day for the public to come see us. And then we're always open the Saturday of the Anthracite Heritage Festival here in Shamokin. We're open that afternoon. And there's also talk, and we have enough gentlemen in the club right now that are retired and are available. We're trying to come up with maybe 1 or 2 days a month to have a regular opening date that we can publicize and have the public come up for that too.
Do you ever get